Hello, this is ASEAN Movie Pulse interviews. I am here with Lee Chatametikool on the occasion of his film Concrete Clouds having screened at New Wave's New Source program at the Hong Kong Arts Center. How are you, Lee?
I'm good. Thank you.
We're really glad to have you here. So, to begin the interview, you had a really busy year in 2021. You participated, as I checked the titles here, you were in Uni, Anatomy of Time, Vengeance is Mine, Memoria, Taste, The Edge of Daybreak. How did you manage to work in all those films in a single year?
But it's not from a single year because of COVID, right? So a lot of the work we started working on them in 2020, and because of COVID, we had to go into remote workflows, and the post-production period got extended, and so a lot of the films didn't get released until this year. So it seems like I did a lot of work this year, but I didn't. It's spread over the last 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a bit about Memoria. This is like your fifth cooperation with Apictabong versus Thakul. How was the
Mhm.
experience?
It was fun. It was challenging. It's a different scenario from working with him before. So in this case, it's a film that's not shot in Thailand, shot in Colombia, with dialogue in Spanish and English, and with I would say a slightly different approach to narrative than normally in his films. By working with Tilda and having the script that's set in Colombia was quite different. So it was a good challenge to work together on this, on how to kind of work within the world of his vision, and with this kind of new location, but also at the same time kind of rediscovering, or kind of not so much, yeah, rediscovering the familiar kind of feeling to it, like familiar kind of frames, familiar kind of ambience and pacing and things like that within the film to go with his other films.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell me a bit also about Taste, which I feel it's a
Hmm.
really different film. We saw it in Rotterdam. How was that?
Yeah, no, taste is. I think for me, it was something to be honest, I've never seen a film like that ever in my life. The aesthetics of the film, the production design, the composition, the direction of Lebao in the shots, and how he directs the actors and moves them in the frame, and places in the frame, I think is quite delicate, and very sensitive to the placement of these characters on the margins of kind of modern Vietnamese society, and how they interact with each other. So it was a very, I guess the editing process was also quite delicate as well, and slowly kind of working through the edit with him, and trying different arrangements, different structures out, trying different scenes out in different places. Yeah, so I think it's a fascinating film.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but when I review a film and I want to comment on the editing, I always have this issue. I'm not sure where the role of the editor stops and the director begins. So, how is usually the case with you? Like, for example, who is in charge of the pace of the film, let's say? How does it work?
I, I think so. For example, um, I think it's a combination of the two, right? So let's say in a film like Memoria or a film like Taste, there's a certain amount of pacing which is controlled by the director, which is what they delivered on set, in how they paced out the dialogue, or how they paced out the action of the actors within the scene. And then the second part of the pacing is the editor's input, then, of like how, where do we choose to start and end these shots? So let's say, the rhythm of the shot, the rhythm within the shot is determined by the production. But I think the rhythm between the shots is what the editor brings into the process.
Mm-hmm. And do you usually find yourself, let's say, let's say when you are working with a new director, like the director of taste, do you find yourself like dictating more about what is going to happen? And let's say in the case of Apichat Bong, you are more have a secondary role. Let's say he says what's going to happen. Is that the case?
No, 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 not at all. I think that every director is different, and I think that the working relationship between an editor and each director is different. But in the case of the way I approach it, at least, whether it's a new director or a younger director or more experienced director, I think I approach it the same way, which is that it's a collaboration, it's a dialogue. So it's a matter of, making suggestions, listening to each other, trying things out, and having fun and experimenting what we can do with the images that were captured by the camera.
Mhm. But you don't ever fight.
No, I mean not to be honest, I don't fight. No, I think it's it's more like guiding the film and trying to find, I guess, the final film out of all of this footage. And I think I always enjoy working with directors, let's say like Api Chatpong or Labao, who are very flexible and very open during the editing process. So they're not adhering to strict interpretation of the script of like this is how I scripted it, this is how I shot it, this is how it has to be. They're very open to trying things out and to discover the film in the editing room, and it's always fun to work with directors like that. And when you're working with a director who's open to trying things out in the edit, there's very little room for fighting. I think it's
Mhm.
yeah, it's just a nice conversation and to figure things out.
Okay, okay. So you have been in the industry almost 20 years now. What do you think are the most important differences that have occurred during this time?
Well, I think for sure the biggest difference is the shift from shooting on 35 millimeter film and projecting in 35 millimeter film to primarily shooting on digital and finishing on digital, with some exceptions like Memoria and some other films. And I think that change has changed the role of the editor as well, and also the editing software has changed the role of the editor. So now we, as an editor, we can control so much more during the edit. And the expectation of the producer or the director from what they see in a rough cut is changed over the last 20 years. So when we're editing, they expect to see, shots that are color balanced to reflect what the final product of the color should be. They want a lot of sound work done, a lot of sound balancing done, cleanup done. So there's a lot of kind of post-production work that comes into play during the editing process, I think, than it did, let's say, 20 years ago.
And was it difficult for you to adapt to this change, would you say?
Not so difficult because I enjoy working with sound. I enjoy doing, basic color grading and things like that. So it's something that I find is quite fun, and it helps me also to judge whether the cut's working or not as well, and without having to wait to send it out, let's say to the colorist, without waiting to send it out to the sound designer. We can, roughly try things out in the edit and see how it's working. So I think it allows us to work a lot faster, to try things out and to play around a lot more than we could, let's say, 20 years ago. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. So you shot Concrete Clouds back in 2013, but you have not shot another film since then, am I right?
Yeah, that's right. I haven't.
Why?
I just didn't have I don't have a script that I want to make into a film yet. So that's really the main reason. And I'm just waiting for the right story to come to me that feels like, yes, this is a film that I really want to make.
Mhm, mhm. And in retrospective, if you were to watch Concrete Clouds now, let's say, is there anything that you would have done differently?
I mean, of course, yeah. I mean, in retrospectively, there's a lot of things that you can always fix and improve on. I think the biggest thing I would have done differently if I could go back to reshoot it would be to reapproach the way that we shot the film. I think that when I shot it, I didn't have as much knowledge about the camera and cinematography as I would have liked. And I think that if I had a better understanding of how to manipulate the camera, how to work with lenses, I think that I would have had a different approach to the visuals of the film.
And okay, one of the most interesting aspects of the film for me was all those music video segments. How come you decided to include those in the film?
For me, I mean, I like films that play off of pop culture references within the film, and I think that for me, as an individual, I think pop culture has a very big effect on how we see ourselves, how we kind of conduct daily life. And so to give an example, like I grew up in Thailand until I finished high school, and then I went to university in the US. And when I was a teenager in Thailand, I always felt like I was very American, because all of my kind of pop culture references were very American references. But then when I went to university in the States, then all of my friends in university there, they made me feel very Thai actually, because I didn't actually know a lot of the pop culture references that they were, bands they had listened to, like shows they had watched and things like that. So I think that at that time, before the internet was very widespread, pop culture was very geo-specific, and it took time for these things to spread. So I always find it interesting how this kind of genres or like motifs within pop culture was spreading in that time. So with the Thai music videos at that time, there were two kind of main strands of styles that you would see quite a lot of. And the first is this very candy colored, like high school, international school kind of image with which is something that was kind of like an ideal, I guess, in that time of the bubble economy, of like to be able to send your kid to an expensive school, wear these fancy school uniforms and things like that. And the other side would be these kind of heartbreak videos of people kind of tearing their shirts in the rain and threatening to kill themselves, and things like that. And I think that these two kind of videos, they really shape the way that um, Thai people see themselves, and how they work through relationships as well. And so I think that because Concrete Clouds at the core, it's a film about relationships. It's a film about love and the inability of the characters to express themselves and to kind of to reach out to and in the kind of the physical world, and in and the pop culture references, the music videos kind of act as that layer that's kind of holding them back, or kind of that layer in between them, where once it's played out in your imagination, you feel like it's happening in real life, but actually you never actually said what you wanted to say, things like that.
And is the music that plays in the film the music you actually like to listen to, or was it the time?
Not 100%. But I chose them because I like them as songs. Yeah. So I went through and I listened to a lot of music from the period, and tried out a lot of different songs to see which ones felt right for the film.
And also, it seems to me that the two brothers kind of symbolize the old and new Thailand in a way. Was that one of your purposes?
Yeah, that was the idea of in the film, they're actually 12 years apart in age. So I always thought of it as, Thailand had kind of two periods. The first was, let's say, 1985, and then 1997, which is 12 years later. And 1985 was when the first McDonald's opened in Thailand, and then 1997 was the financial crisis. So for me, it was kind of that cycle of growing up in a country developing very quickly.
And at one point, the older brother says to the younger one, "You need to learn how to love if you want to be a man." What does this phrase mean to you?
Hold on one second.
Okay.
Sorry, my ear fell out.
Okay.
It doesn't have a specific meaning. I think it's one of those kind of things. I think that you know, when when you think about movies and you think about scripts, you always think about these kind of very cool kind of lines that come out. And I think that when I thought of that line, that it was along those ideas of like wanting the brother to say something that sounds mature, it sounds intelligent, it sounds deep, but actually maybe it doesn't have anything like very valid to it, but it makes him sound like an older brother or sound like a father or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And okay, what is your opinion on the concept of love? Very general question.
I think my opinion on the concept of love, I mean, in relation to the film, I think is that we build up these kind of constructs of the imaginary, and the constructs of the imaginary then prevent us from experience the reality of this relationship or love, because we're always kind of looking for more. We're looking for, the lover that we see in the film, the lover that we see in the music video. We're looking for this kind of relationship with that kind of relationship, and I think that this imaginary prevents us from living in the present, from appreciating the dynamics that's happening before us, like in the person we're in the relationship with. And so for me, in a way, love is about overcoming the imaginary, so getting past this kind of fantasy and this imaginary world, and appreciating the person that you're in a relationship or in love with for who they are, and finding a way to grow together with all of those faults, as well as the good qualities within that.
And would you say that like nowadays is our relationships more difficult than in the past? As I say,
I
the world is moving faster now, so maybe there's not so much time, let's say, or something like that.
I think I wouldn't necessarily say that relationships are more difficult, but I think that we we feel less inclined to put up with things that are not making us happy than before. That there's somehow the feeling that everybody has a choice, everybody can leave anytime. So I think that that's probably the biggest difference, in how people work through relationships or treat relationships, because yeah, I think it's a matter of feeling that you are liberated, and you don't, that in the end, the most important thing is what the individual, what the me or the I is getting out of this relationship, or what where me or I see myself going in the future, or see myself in the future, is more important than I think working through the relationship and trying to see where the relationship could go, or where the us could go in the future. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I think that's probably the big difference.
Okay, okay. And also, suicide seems to be one of the motifs in the film. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, so suicide was the reality back then. In 1997, there was a lot of people committing suicide. Even last year during COVID, here in Thailand, actually, in 2020, actually, I believe more people committed suicide because of COVID in Thailand than died from COVID itself. So I think that for me, I'm I think, I mean, suicide is quite painful. I've had a close relative who's committed suicide, and I think it I think for the living, it's the most painful way to lose somebody, because there's always so many unanswered questions of, like, what could I have done, or is there something I could have done to prevent it.
Hmm. Hmm. And also the concept of money, how do you think that the impact of money have on lives of people grows more and more as time passes?
Pardon?
Uh,
What grows?
uh, like how much money like affects our life? Do you think it's the impact of money increases as time passes?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think that, I mean, it's maybe not exactly answering your question, but actually part of the reason that I deal with money in the film is that what happened with money in a way is that it became imaginary, it became virtual, and it stopped being real. So the way that we deal with money, the way that we make money nowadays is very disconnected from actually doing real things. You can trade cryptocurrencies and make lots of money in short periods of time, and you can lose lots of money in short periods of time. And I think that this kind of disconnection that we have with wealth and money, that's not so much tied to physical work or creating something physical and things like that, is an interesting change, and I think is changing the way that we deal with money, the way that we deal with the concept of money and its value.
Okay. And what is your opinion of Thai movie industry at the moment? What is the situation?
Well, I think, right now it's like everywhere else in the world, it's been a tough 2 years for the movie industry because the cinemas have been closed for most of the 2 years. So a lot of films have not been released and a lot of productions were pushed back. Um, but 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 aside from that, aside from the COVID thing, I think that there's a lot of interesting things happening in the Thai movie industry right now. There's a development of doing a lot of, let's say, series or work for kind of online platforms and things like that. That's allowing, new and different kind of stories to be told that wouldn't have necessarily been told before because of the constraints of the cinematic theatrical distribution, things like that. And I think the independent cinema is also now quite strong. Now we're starting to come back and starting to do production again, and I think we'll see some interesting films coming out in the next few years.
And do you think that the whole situation with COVID will be a great inspiration for filmmakers in the future, or the opposite? I don't know.
I mean, I think, it could be, but I think, I mean, for me, I think the situation of COVID was extreme, but I think it was not quite so different from how our society was trending anyways. I think we were trending to a lot of kind of virtual meetups, a lot of distancing and things like that anyways. And climate change, I think, is eventually going to push back on airline travel and all those kinds of things anyway. So I think that COVID for me was, it was like a reminder to that you don't have to travel everywhere all the time,
Mm,
and yeah, and it's nice to be in one place for a while. Whether it'll be inspirations for films, it's hard to say. I mean, I think that everybody was, I mean, myself, I think, I think everybody fell into a bit of a rut, I think, during COVID, being in one place for a while and not knowing like the situation when you go out. I think airborne illnesses is the scariest kind of illness because
mhm,
you can't see it. Yeah.
mhm, mhm. Okay. And any plans for the future for you? Any new projects you are working on?
For directing, not right now. Like I said, I have some ideas I'm still developing, and hopefully, in the near future sometime, maybe one of them could strike a chord to be made, and then yeah, and doing some editing projects, I think that will be quite interesting. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Regarding editing, any specific that you are working on? Specific project?
I think there's nothing I can really announce quite yet.
Okay,
Yeah, I think
okay,
there's, yeah.
okay. There were enough announcements this year from you anyway, so okay, okay. I guess that's it. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay,
Thank you.
so from Panos Kotzathanasis, this was ASEAN Movie Pulse interviews, and see you again soon. Bye.
Cool. Bye. Thank you.